Hello, everybody, and welcome back to At the Movies with William Fletcher. I, as usual, am your host, William Fletcher, and joining me again is Kitty. Say hello, Kitty.
Hello.
So we did an episode on Titanic, and I think the general opinion was that we thought it was pretty good, from my memory. Yeah. So this episode, you chose a movie for this episode. In fact, you chose Us.
By Jordan Peele, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any particular reason you chose it?
Well, just like it's an interesting one to take a closer look at, so I thought it would be good for a podcast.
Yeah. So I don't really know where to start. Well, I guess to start with, have you seen Get Out?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And what did you think of Get Out?
It was what I was expecting. I enjoyed it, but well, with both movies, they were compelling, but not really scary to me. And I went into it with very much the idea that these are horror films. You know, they're meant to be thrillers. But after watching and reading about them and stuff, I realized, oh no, it's much more about like symbolism, and they're much deeper themes rather than it just being like, scary twins and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm just gonna be honest. I think Get Out is somewhat overrated in terms of like. I think like I can sort of understand why some people think it's like this big thing for like black people, but I don't see it as that. I mean, I do. I mean, I get that's the point, but I don't think it's as well done, like as well written as like other movies have been that sort of tackle sort of similar sort of ideas, about like racism and how I guess sort of the treatment that black people get and receive at times. I think like Do the Right Thing is a much better telling. It's a different story, but I think it's a much better film that tackles and deals with racism. It's not the same kind of movie, but it is a better movie. That I think, like it's a much better story, and I think there's a lot more to that. And I think it's just a much better written film than I think Get Out is. So I think Get Out is like fine.
Yeah, I think I agree. It was very much fine. I didn't think it was as revolutionary as a lot of people seem to think. I also didn't think it was great in the horror genre. I wasn't really scared, but I think it was like once I watched like analysis videos and stuff like that, I started noticing a lot more small details, and I was like, oh well, okay, it is it deserves, I think, a lot of the recognition that it got. But I think for sure with Us, you can see the growth, and you can see that with Get Out, Jordan Peele was still kind of, finding his feet. With the kind of movies that he wanted to make, and he's definitely improved on that with Us.
Yeah, I do think Us is the better of the two films. I saw it the first time I saw it. I don't remember when I first saw it. It was around like the time it came. It's like sort of like mid to like it's like May or June last year, and I thought it was good. And so but I don't really remember a whole lot. So I rewatched it for this, and I think it stayed. I think it stayed like the same, like the score I gave it then. But I feel like the score is more justified because I gave it a score having not remembered much of it, and so I thought if I go back and rewatch it, maybe the score will maybe my rating for it will change and improve, or it'll just stay the same. And it stayed the same, but I think I feel much more like I can justify why I gave it that rating.
Mm. I think it did a lot better at being a horror film. I was
Yeah.
definitely slightly more scared. Um, yeah, I don't think either of the films are really that scary. I think it's very much
Mhm.
more about the themes.
Mhm. Yeah.
But Us is, I feel, much better. It has like a more interesting plot, just in general, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. I definitely
Which
think that, yeah, I think it's a much more interesting idea, because I think
yeah,
that with the whole like Get Out thing, it's sort of, you sort of see those kind of movies that, like, you kind of see those kinds of movies in the sort of like, not to that level or in that specific genre, but I feel that there's lots of movies where you sort of have, these like boyfriend and girlfriend, and then one of them meets like their significant others, like family or whatever, and it's not what you was, and they're not what they would expect, Where I think this is where Us, I think, is a much better. It's a more unique story, and like
yeah,
something that um is just, it's much more interesting, and a much more interesting story to tell.
yeah. And I think the story works so much better with the themes, with
Hmm.
um Jordan Peele's like, of course, I don't want to say his agenda because that sounds like I'm putting it in a negative context.
Hmm.
That's what he
Yeah.
said, but
Yeah.
yeah, with all the racism and stuff and like the duality of man,
Hmm.
it works so much better because it's like much more literal and
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I don't really. I guess we could start with just like talking about like the performances from like the cast, I think, and or like, do you have like a specific place you want to start from?
Yeah, we can do performances.
Yeah. So I just gotta get up the cast. Well, Lupita Nyong'o. I think she's phenomenal. I think she gives a very good performance. I feel, and I think that like she's phenomenal in just sort of everything in what I have seen her in, and I think that she is I don't know what to say. I just think it's very like I think playing two different parts, like sort of two different roles that she has to play,
Mm. Yeah,
and like having to play this sort of like the two dualities, these two different
yeah.
kinds of characters, and I
The
think that
good
goes
side,
for
the
the main,
society.
and I think that goes for the main family, like the four actors who play the main family. I think they all give very good performances for playing those different, you know, roles, having to play both sides of it.
Yeah, I think I don't know the actress's name, but the daughter particularly did that
Mm.
so well.
Yeah, yeah. I've the act. I'm not going to try and pronounce that. But yeah, I think she was gave very good performance, and I think it's like a lot of it's very nice to see kid actors who actually can act, and like
Yeah,
because
that's very
I
refreshing.
because I think there's a lot of the times a child performance it's a very difficult thing to get, because it's very hard to work with kids and to get them to give the performances you want. But I think that in this film, I think both of these young actors give really good performances and are very competent, and I definitely think that like what they sort of do in future, I feel that they've got, you know, whatever they do next, I think they will be like big stars, like,
Yeah, they've
down the
got
line.
yeah, very bright future for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. I also think that Winston Duke. I think he's a very he's not like an amazing performance, but I think with what he is given and what he has to do, I think he does a good job with that. Um, and I just think that like the entire cast basically is like decent at what they do. Like they're
Yeah,
all
I think,
good, you know.
yeah, they all did what they needed to do. I think probably Winston he was like the father, right?
Yeah, he was the father. Yeah.
Yeah, I think his performance was probably the least like stunning. You know, all of the other
Mhm.
characters really had a clear contrast between them and the
Mhm.
altar. But him, I
Oh.
mean, he still had like it was a great performance. It was still, it did what it needed to do. It wasn't bad by any means, but it
Mm.
was the least, like, it had the least dramatic contrast.
Yeah, I think that is the sort of goes with the family. Is I think his is tethered version the alter ego. I get the other version is not as interesting or as like fun. I
Yeah,
guess you could say. Because I think the other three have they their roles and who they get to play is very much like there's a lot more that they can do with that. You know, I think that
yeah,
there's a lot of just yeah. I just think there's a lot more like like there's more of them, and I think that they get. I think they're written more like there's more stuff where they're sort of written
yeah.
as
They
character
have more opportunity to
to
portray differently.
yeah to stand out, I guess, and to
Yeah,
whereas Wisdom Duke is just sort of like he's there and he's fine, but he's not this amazing performance like the other three are.
yeah,
I think amazing might be too far of a leap, but like very good. Like,
yeah.
mm,
Like the kid that played like the son, and
hmm
I think Pluto was the
yeah,
other
yeah.
version's
Pluto
name.
was the other one version. Yeah.
Yeah, he was so amazing. Like you could really tell, like he really embraced his more like animalistic side. I thought
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
both
Yeah.
kids were really, really great performances from them.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
there were those like noises that they made, like
mm,
the way that they communicated, and the voice that um the tethered mum, or
mm-hmm.
actually not the tethered one, the voice that she spoke in
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
was, at first I thought it was like a little bit cringy, but
Mm-hmm.
uh
No, I
it
had that.
it
Yeah,
did well.
exact. I had that exact same sort of feeling. I was like, oh, is this gonna? I was sort of like, is this gonna get like grating? Is this just gonna get annoying? You know, and it didn't. I sort of felt that it added to the character, and I in fact thought that oh, this is. I think that that performance is helped, I guess, by that
Yeah,
voice, and I think it like
helps differentiate
it
almost.
yeah, and and I think and I like how with each of the family, it's sort of each one of them sort of got their own sort of like I don't like they've got their own different thing in this like sort of like they've got like their own sort of different. I'm trying to like think of the word here, but it's like I guess sort of they've got something to like they've all got something unique about them. I guess is what
Yeah,
I'm.
like a gimmick almost.
Yeah, like how like the tethered mum is like the only one. He's the only one who can properly talk, who can like say words and stuff. And then like the little
Mm.
girl, she's just like always got this like massive like smirk on her face or whatever. And then how they sort of and I like that because it gives it something a little bit more. Because if they were just like the
Yeah,
same but just like evil versions, I don't think that would have been as interesting or as like entertaining. But I think with they give them unique character traits that differentiate them, and they give
yeah,
them
more depth.
yeah. I think that is like a good thing that they're different. So it just you know so it helps to make
Yeah,
them more
and it also
interesting
makes the
characters.
movie more like, yeah, it makes the movie more visually interesting when
Mm-hmm.
certain characters like have those certain qualities, like
Mm.
the kid, uh, the kid's a pyromaniac. He loves fire. So
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
you see fire, you think, oh, it's this kid. It
Yeah.
really helps to create a more like literal connection, like with your mind to the character. You know, like you
Hmm.
see that smile and you think, oh, it's the tethered daughter. You know.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. I've got so who else is in this? I think the other sort of family that there is, the like the white
The white
family.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the mum is played by Elizabeth Moss, who was in The Invisible Man earlier this year, which I thought was very good. I thought she was very good in that.
Yeah.
I thought she was very good for what she was like given. It like in the sort of sense that like it's like sort of she's not given a whole lot to do, but what she is given, she does like a lot with. Like and like with her tethered version of her character, I again think she's not in it for that much, but she does a lot with that character, and
Yes.
like making the most of a little amount of screen time.
Yeah. She's really great with those like wide eyes. So you see her
Hmm.
tethered, like
Yeah,
putting on makeup in the mirror, and
yeah.
I think yeah, like the tethered, like showing them as like people, like giving them the
Hmm.
certain characteristics makes them like feel so much more human than I think if they were just like evil versions, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
And like the whole makeup in the mirror thing was really like mesmerizing, and I think she did amazingly in
Hmm.
like every scene that she was in
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think that's sort of like sort of good writing in that. I think with some other writers, they might not do that with characters. They might not write them in a way where they don't make them unique. I guess in that like they sort of they're the same like that like they're just an evil version of them. But with this, they sort of differentiate them enough. They give them unique like sort of gimmicks, I guess. So it's not just it's an evil version of that character,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that is, I think that is, good writing on Jordan Peele's part of
Yeah.
just doing something that is, I just think it's very good writing to write them in
Yeah.
that way.
Very unique. You know, like
Mm.
it could have gone in that different direction, which I'm so glad that it didn't. And it
Hmm.
was like and those characters were actually like fully fledged, like deep characters, like
Yeah.
two dimensional, not just, you know, like we said, the evil twins.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Um, I think that's sort of like before like I think those are like the sort of the main characters and sort of main sort of like performances. Like I think that all the and I think that the little girl who plays the young Lupita, Lupita's character, like
Mm.
the I think she is again not in the movie much, but I think that she does a very good job for what like she does have to do. Like she's only sort of
Yeah.
like at the very beginning, at the very end, and I do appreciate that. Again, it's a kid actor who does a lot with not very much to do.
Yeah. She did so well, I think, with the like the when they first switched, when you see
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning of the film, and they think that she has PTSD because she's not talking, because of course, like the tethered don't know how to speak, and
Mm-hmm.
she's
Yeah.
just like silent, like wide eyes.
Mm-hmm.
She's
Yeah. Yeah.
really good at just like making the audience feel like unsettled, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it was very very subtle but excellent
Mm-hmm.
performance.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think that the score for this, like the opening credits and just sort of the score throughout, I think at times it could have been a bit overbearing. In this, like I think at times it would have been sort of more if there wasn't a score in it. If it was just sort of if there was like a score, but it was not like just really like a sort of like a subtle score that you did that was not very like noticeable or that
Mm,
you could sort of pick out, I guess.
yeah, There was one thing that I really liked in, I think it was the car ride there.
Mm-hmm.
There was a song on the radio. I don't know the name of the song, but the dad's singing it, and the kid's like, "This song's about drugs," and the dad goes, "This isn't a song about drugs. This is a dope song." I thought that was cool because
Oh, that's actually
dope
yeah,
is drugs.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
yeah. And actually, I will say you just pointed out something that I never that you made me just realize is that the tethered people don't talk like throughout the entire movie.
Yeah,
I was just sort of like. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I didn't have a problem with it. I was just like, yeah, that's cool. You know, that makes them interesting. But it explains why Lupita's character is the only one that can talk because she's different from all the others. And I do appreciate that. That it is that you've pointed that out. And just it's more consistency that she's the only one that does talk because all the others are just like silent, you know, or they just like sort of make
yeah,
noises that aren't like normal noises. They don't say words. They just make not what like the noises they can make.
yeah.
Um,
And you can see how like her language has evolved, like because I'm sure when she was younger, before she was switched with her tethered, she was just like she could speak regularly. But then you see when she comes back to like take her place back, you can see that her speech has evolved into the more like grunting kind of tethered form.
yeah,
Like it's really gruff and
yeah, and
just racing.
yeah, and I think that's combined along with the fact that like her throat was like crushed, was
Yeah.
like
Oh, I
injured.
forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I watched that. I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's why her voice is different, you know, because
Yeah.
her and so I think again, it's sort of it makes sense. It's not just a twist for the sake of doing a twist, you know.
Yeah,
I
but also, oh my god, what an amazing twist! I think this movie has one of the best endings that I've seen like in the past like a couple of years.
yeah.
So good.
I always appreciate like a good twist ending because and I think like as most people say the best twist endings are ones
Yeah.
that you don't see coming but also make sense. Like if you like stuff like Fight Club, like you know with that twist ending, you know like and like you watch it, you watch the movie again. It's like oh, of course, it was like obvious that it was a twist ending, and it's sort of set up and built
Yeah.
to that twist, and you know stuff like I'm just trying to think of other movies with twist endings. Like what's like a movie with a twist ending, like a really good twist ending?
Uh, I can't even think. But yeah, movies that you can go back and watch, and then you can see places where it fits more and more.
Yeah.
And all the pieces kind of fall into place after the twist. That's
Yeah.
when you know it's a great twist.
Yeah. One movie, my favorite movie is Memento, and like I would argue that that film has got a twist ending, and you sort of you watch it and it makes sense, and you can sort of see how it gets to that point, and how this character, you know, sort of believes this thing that isn't true, or they've convinced themselves of something that you know
Yeah.
isn't true. Yeah. And so that just I will admit I think the twist it's good, but I'm not sure if it's like this amazing twist. Like I don't like I like it and I think it's set up and it makes sense and it all works, but it's not like oh if someone was to ask me like hey what are your favorite like what do you think of the best like twists like ending twists of a movie, I probably wouldn't say Us because I don't think it's like it's something that I don't think is like amazing or it's not this just great idea, you know.
I
Not
think
great
it was.
idea.
I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, no, I think it's good and it's like very well handled, but it doesn't it's just not one I'm gonna remember or like say like oh that was a great twist. That's just what I think.
Yeah, I really loved it. I think I will for sure like reference this
Mm-hmm.
as like a movie with an amazing twist, you know. And I liked how the very I like how this is like irrelevant to what I'm about to say, but
Mm-hmm.
all of the car rides I think are kind of symbolic, and you know it starts
Mm-hmm.
in a car, then it ends with the car. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, but um, how the kid like puts the mask down at the end after he sees his mother. I think you know you can see the kid realizing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that helps the twist. Like, it's not just something that the audience saw anymore. It's like a tangible thing that happened in that universe.
Mm-hmm.
Once the kid realizes, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, yeah, it was outstanding ending. Like throughout the whole movie, I wasn't fully compelled. Like the second act was a little boring, but then like that ending really like changed my opinion of like the whole movie prior because I like the twist that much.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Um, I think that is a fair point. I just don't agree with it. Like,
Fair enough.
I guess it comes down to like I don't know if
Personal
the twist.
preference.
Yeah, I think the thing is as well. I just don't know how much the twist added to my enjoyment of the movie. Like again with other twists, I think that they add something. Like I love the movie and the twist is just a little bit extra. Whereas this, I sort of felt like didn't do that. Like it was like it didn't make me enjoy the movie as much. Like because I was sort of like I thought the movie was good, but the twist didn't add anything, and I think that's what a twist should do. It should add something. It
Mm,
should it should like make the movie even like more. It should add an extra layer to it. It's sort of like because like I do think that another thing is that I don't like I do admit that there is sort of build up and like lead up and it's foreshadowed and such, but I don't know if they spend as much time sort of setting it up as maybe I think they should have. Like they shouldn't spend the entire movie trying to set it up because then that ruins the surprise. But I just kind of wish there might have been a little bit more teasing or a little bit more of like a foreshadow
yeah.
to the twist itself.
Like I read somewhere that um one of the hints that that she was like the mother was actually tethered was that first scene in the car when she was clapping like clicking her fingers along to the rhythm of the song. She was
Mhm.
like clicking off beat, and that was meant to be like a hint that she was tethered, but I like would never have noticed that if it wasn't pointed out to me.
Wait, so okay, so the song like at the beginning where the family is going to the house they're staying at, and she's
Yeah.
clicking her fingers to the
Yeah,
beat of
she's
the
like,
song.
yeah,
Uh,
except it's like slightly off beat.
oh, slightly offbeat. Okay.
Yeah, and that was meant to be like a hint that she was tethered, but I think maybe like on like a third viewing I might have noticed that,
Yeah,
but
that
I
is a
think I would have
thing. I
liked.
think
Yeah.
there also is like too subtle. Like if you like, there's hints and that you can give, but you could also be too subtle with it.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
would have
that
liked some more
if it was a little more
more
obvious,
obvious.
or you sort of you make like I don't know if a character should have pointed it out exactly, like point out that hey, you're not like clicking on beat, because I don't know if that might have been a little too like much.
But just like a look or something from the
Yeah,
husband, like
exactly. Something
pointing or
that sort
something
of
like
makes it a
that.
little more obvious that like, that's interesting. You know, something like
Yeah,
that. I think that would have made it work better and would have
yeah,
been more of a it would have just added more to it, I think.
yeah. I think a lot of the things that made me appreciate this movie more were things that I did not notice at all when watching, and things
Mhm.
that I only noticed like when reading other reviews or analyses
Mhm.
and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like all of the T-shirts that they wear have like hella symbolism, like so much, so many
Mhm.
details. I
Yeah.
completely noticed.
Yeah. And I think that is like that happens a lot. Like when I watch a movie for the first time, I'm not sure how much I sort of look at it and sort of try and find like hidden meaning, or try and make it in, or sort of try and find like symbolism or everything. Unless I don't try and look for it. If I notice it, I'll point it out, but I won't be like just looking for it, because I don't think when I first watch a film, I should do that, or anyone should do that. I think you should just enjoy it, and if you notice symbolism, that's good, but I don't think you should actively look for it the first time you are watching it. You know,
Yeah.
like
And I think the best movies are the ones where you don't notice everything straight away, and you can watch them over and over and still get the same enjoyment while finding new things that you might have missed.
Yeah. Like when I first watched Scott Pilgrim, there were things I noticed, like sort of because as a fan of Edgar Wright, I'm sort of used to having to watch a film and be like, okay, there's symbolism here, and this means this, yada yada yada. And so I wasn't looking for it, but it was just things that I would notice because I'm used to his style of filmmaking and used to how he makes films. So I noticed it, and how he sort of, there's like foreshadowing, and how like all these things represent this, like colors mean all these different things. But with other filmmakers, I don't do that. Like the first time I watch it, because I'm not aware of how like that filmmaker does things, like how they sort of put symbolism and stuff in, and that's just like how I feel, and that's sort of what I think about some movies, in the sense that like I appreciate symbolism, and I think when I go back to rewatch a movie, I'll probably notice it more. That I'll probably look for stuff then after the first watch, because I want to see how they like, I guess, like sort of see like, oh, here's like foreshadowing, or oh, this means this, you know.
Yeah, I think with us, it was kind of a interesting experience going into it after seeing like Get Out and knowing like what the themes are going to be. I think it was impressive that there were still so many things that you wouldn't notice on the first watch. Even when knowing like what you're getting into.
Yeah, I do get that, and that does make sense. And to be honest, when I went back to rewatch it, because I didn't remember much of it, so I was just wondering, like, is there a lot of sort of like subtle like racism, like is this film, like, does Jordan Peele make sort of references to racism, or does he sort of make a does he sort of talk about racism in like a way, and I forgot, and I just didn't remember that this was just sort of like a straight up horror, and there was not much sort of reference to racism in like this film.
There's not a lot of dialogue at all, really, like about those kinds of, like, if there is conversation, it's almost just like throwaway like lines, like about the fights that they just had, whatever. Which I thought was interesting.
It's sort of continue on that point of like dialogue. I felt that some of the times when there would be like some of the comedy, I felt was out of place, and like I didn't think they should have done it at that point. Like, I thought there were times where there was meant to be these jokes and such, but I was just sort of like, I don't think the scenes needed jokes. I think it could have...
like at some points, the humor came off like as unsettling. Like when the daughter says that she's driving because she has the highest kill count or something like that. I was like, oh. And there was another scene where where they've just defeated or killed the tethered version of the White family.
I don't know their names, but the other major family in the film,
Yeah.
and they're sort of the dialogue. And they were trying to make these jokes, and I was like, I don't know, like that didn't work for me. Like I think I have this with like some films where they try to do comedy at points where it doesn't need comedy.
Yeah.
Like I find if there was comedy earlier on, like before everything like kicked off, like the family just had this like comedy together and they were telling jokes or doing all these things, and I would have been fine with that, and that would have worked for me. But I think at that point, when all these terrible things are happening, you know, people are dying and everybody's getting hurt, it sort of took me out, and I sort of felt that it shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, I agree. But I think maybe it could have been like especially if the kids said something, it could have been like desensitizing. It could have been like symbolism for that. That
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is like this amount of violence is like not uncommon, like
Mm-hmm.
something for the kids to be seeing, and that could have been like trying
Mm-hmm.
into the whole racism thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah. I've got a couple notes. I liked I sort of liked some of the callbacks that they made. Like the one I made a note of is when it's Winston Duke's character here and his tethered version, and they're on like the boat, whatever, and the tethered version like trying to chase him on his boat or whatever, and the boat like stops because it's sort of like a not very good quality boat, and I like that they sort of set that up earlier, in that, like, and I like that it was a cool, like, because when you watch that scene initially of him like showing off the boat, you just think, he's just got a crappy boat, but I liked how they sort of called back to it later and how it made sense. Like it didn't just come out of nowhere. Like they set it up like it's like, you know, a setup and payoff.
Yeah, like in other movies, in that same like style, you might see like oh, they're trying to get away, but the car won't turn on, which is like, oh, how fucking convenient, you know. But
Yeah.
this movie, it's like it actually makes sense and it fits into place.
Yeah.
Which is
I think that, yeah, if they were to, I wouldn't have a problem with that as a trope if it was set up earlier and it makes sense that, oh, it's like it sucks that like the car whatever doesn't work, or like every now and again it might just do that because it makes sense. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's like, hey, let's just do this just for a little bit of extra tension. It actually feels like, oh yeah, this makes sense, and it, you know, it works. I remember there were more callbacks in the film, but I'm trying to remember like what else they were, because I saw this film like last week, so I don't have the best memory of like what, like, I'll see if I could, like, do you have any like memory of like other callbacks that were made in the film?
I saw it like a week ago too.
Okay, well that's very good.
Not the freshest
No.
memory, but
yeah,
there were quite a few.
Yeah. I actually would go back to the performances actually, and I made a note of Red, who is the tethered version of like the main woman's version. I remember the like sort of opening speech and monologue from her tethered version. I felt that was like very tense and there's a lot of suspense, and I think that sort of goes with this film as a whole, is that I think that the tension works and that you sort of do feel like anything can happen, like anybody can die at like sort of any point, you know. It's very much like that's just sort of what is that this is like I like a lot of horror movies, but I watch some where I'm just sort of like it doesn't feel like there's any tension here, and I feel like this has tension and like there's stakes to it, and you sort of hope the best for these characters.
Yes, I think the children really helped emphasize that.
Yeah.
Because you could really feel like the mother's like fierce affection of her children. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I yeah, and I just thought it was very like you sort of could feel that like you know anything could happen at like any point
Yeah.
in like the sense of you don't know if like these characters will survive, and I think that's good writing and very unique writing that like this could you know like anything can
Yes.
happen.
Mm. So you know the rabbits that were like
Yeah.
you saw in the first, and then like later
Yeah.
you saw them like running
Yeah.
rampant like through the sewers. I thought I had like no idea. They kind of like threw me off, but then
Yeah.
towards the end, I was thinking that it might have been like an Alice in Wonderland kind of thing, like
Yeah,
a rabbit hole.
yeah, yeah, I heard something like that because I was a little confused by like the rabbits as well. I was like, that's an interesting choice. We got rabbits here, but I do think that I think I read something like, oh, it's like a rabbit hole thing, like she's gonna sort of fall down the rabbit hole, and it makes sense. Like, and I sort of think that. I think that's sort of going to be sort of like a theme with Jordan Peele as a filmmaker and as a writer, is that a lot of his films there's going to be a lot of symbolism that you sort of like you can sort of have your own interpretation, I guess, of what this means. Like, oh, there's this, and then you could like hear all these opinions and read all these things, like, oh, and you've got all these people that think it's blah blah blah, like it's all these different things, and I think that's sort of the mark of like good writing, is that there's no wrong or right interpretation. Like sort of anybody can think this. There's no wrong or right answer.
I thought the rabbits also could have been like symbolism for like test subjects. You know how like, makeup's tested on animals and stuff like that. I thought that could have been a cool idea.
Yeah. I do sort of think it's the whole sort of going like Alice in Wonderland type thing, I think that's sort of my interpretation of it, but I don't think you can be wrong or right about how this, like what this in film is trying to say or what this represents. It sort of represents its own thing.
I think like movies like this have like Reddit pages like dedicated analyzing them and stuff like that. I just think they are, that's like the biggest compliment you could get as a writer. Like, having people like fighting over what it means. And I think both of Jordan Peele's films like 100% have that, and I can't wait to see what he does next.
I had a point that I was going to make, and I've forgotten it now. I think that I'm trying to remember what it was. I don't remember what I was going to say, honestly. Actually, I had like a point that I was going to make, and I don't remember it now.
I had like some little things that I noticed that I could talk about.
Yeah, sure.
So just with the symbolism, I thought the handcuffs, that was huge, because like when she's like handcuffed, the mother, she's handcuffed the entire time pretty much, and then you see at the end, like the first thing she does when she like beats the other one is handcuff her to the bed, like she was handcuffed to the bed like years ago. Also, I thought like the pivotal line, like the most important thing, the thing that really made my mind switch from like this is just a movie to this is a movie about something, was when they asked, "What are you people?" and they said, "We're Americans." Like it wasn't so obvious, like that they were humans, like just like them, I thought that was like a big racism thing. Also, there are a lot of Michael Jackson references, which
Mm.
was interesting.
Yeah.
And I saw like in a Jordan Peele interview that he very much saw Michael Jackson as like representing the duality of man, like black and white, um, kind of thing, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Also, Pluto, the name of the tethered youngest boy.
Mm-hmm.
Pluto is like, I saw that. This isn't an original thought. I'm stealing this from an interview, but
Mm-hmm.
Pluto is like, it never sees the sun's light. Like it's always in darkness,
Oh,
and
okay.
so that was like you can see his like obsession with fire. It's because he's never like seen light. So I
Yeah.
thought that was
That
pretty
is.
cool as well.
Yeah. That's a. Yeah. That actually makes sense, and that is a very interesting uh, sort of perspective and sort of thought on it.
Yeah.
I just remember what I was going to say was that that Us is like it's a much bigger film in terms of like
Mm.
because sort of like because Get Out is mostly within sort of one kind of location, like it's in the house, but it's sort of like and sort of most of the movie is around that house. But
Yeah.
this, they sort of like that there's like a a fair, then there's like a house, and then they go back to fair, and it's like this underground sort of world that is created
Yeah.
from it, and I think that is probably, and I think with Us, I think that Jordan Peele was probably given a little bit more money and a little more freedom, I guess, to make what he wanted to make because of the success of Get Out, and so I think that is why this film is much bigger. I think I feel it is a lot bigger because if you because like looking at the budget, like Get Out had a budget of $4.5 million, and then Us had a budget of $20 million. So you can
Damn.
see that it got so much more money to play with, and I think
Yeah.
that he's sort of I sort of feel that Jordan Peele, as like a writer and filmmaker, he could probably make what he wanted. Like he could probably ask for anything, and I feel that
Mm.
like studios would probably give him what he wanted because he's such
Yeah.
a big deal and such a and he makes money for them as well. Like these movies are very like both Get Out and Us were very financially successful. You know, they made
Yeah.
roughly the same amount at the box office, and and they're just very big. They just make money. So I think that Jordan Peele, whatever he does next, it'll be whatever he wants it to be.
Yes. Which I think is a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a great thing, but it can also be a terrible thing. You know, like
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan, for example. I
Yeah.
think Tenet personally was a bit of a mess,
Mm,
and it's
yeah.
just like the result of an unhinged director has like who has an unlimited budget doing
Mhm.
whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
But Jordan Peele, for sure, he really
I do
didn't
think.
like waste the opportunity.
Yeah. I do think. I will admit I liked Tenet, but I felt that I didn't really get it, and I don't, and I kind of hate people who are like, oh, you don't get it because like, oh, you're not smart enough to get it, or oh,
Yeah.
don't worry, you'll realize in years that it's a classic. It's like, or maybe it's just not that as good as you think it is.
Yes, I
Like-
agree with that 100%.
I'm not any less smart than you because I don't like a film or I don't get it or the sound mixing is horrendous. Like, it's not. I just thought it was. I also thought it was like fine. Like, it's probably one of his weaker films, and I think that I appreciate what Nolan does in that he wants to do a lot of practical things, and he sort of wants to do it as real as he can, and I think that's fine. But I think he is getting to a point where his career is sort of dropping in terms of quality of film. I think the last truly phenomenal thing he's made was Inception 10 years ago, and I feel that ever since then he's sort of been at a bit of a decline in terms of quality of his films as well as people enjoying his films. I feel that stuff like Interstellar and stuff have sort of like have not been as
fallen flat in comparison.
yeah to and like I like Nolan as a filmmaker, like he's made some of my favorite films, but I think that he's sort of getting a little too far up his own ass to say in that like he's sort of doing what he wants, but I think that I don't have a problem with like making films that are there's like they're a lot deeper than you think, or that. But I think there's like a fine line between making something that's deep and you have to sort of think, and just making something that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I think Jordan Peele has done that in that his films, like, you get them, you can make sense, like you know what happens. There's no sort of like, oh, I don't really know what happened here. Like you know what this is, like face value, you know what it is, and you can. And I think most people could interpret and figure out, like, okay, so this happened here, yada yada yada. Yeah. But there's a bunch of
still leaves details for you to figure out on rewatches and analyze and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's very much like sort of. So you can appreciate it as a film, like you sort of there's like sort of multiple levels, and that you can, if you don't want to analyze it, you can just watch it and be like, that's good, and then you don't have to think about it again. But you can sort of break it down and sort of go into different layers and say and sort of make interpretations about this scene or this character or this moment or this and this and that. And I think with some films they're not as good as doing that. Like Tenet, I think Tenet you can't. I'm not sure if you can enjoy it at a base level. And I think most films you should be able to enjoy it at a base level. Like I think, like I'm fine if you don't get everything, but I think if as long as you sort of understand like the main plot, like what the characters were doing, and everything was sort of clear, then I think that's fine. But if you just make a film that just is you doing whatever you want, and you're not really, and you're sort of making what you want to see, not what you think like maybe, and like I think filmmakers should tell the stories they want to tell, but I think you should also make it so that it can be enjoyed by a massive demographic and a massive audience. And I think that is something that Jordan Peele has excelled at so far, is that, like, even if you don't like his films or you think they're, like, fine, you have to admit that he makes them in a way that can sort of...
They can be taken at face value and still enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think that is film, and I think that's what, like... And I think that... I don't know if I want to say like all films should be like that, but I definitely think that, you know, stuff like sort of movie like if the movies you're making are these big things that everybody's going to see, then I don't know how like deep and sort of like it like sort of you sort of should make it so that they can understand. I don't know if you should, for like a general audience, you should do something that's a little bit like, oh, it's a little deeper, it's a little harder to think, because I don't want to say that the general movie-going public are stupid per se, but I don't know if they want to necessarily think about it. Like people who don't watch movies a lot or aren't analyzing them, I don't know how excited or like the enjoyment they get of a movie that they sort of have to think about afterwards. Like they have to be like, okay, so this meant this and this meant that. I like if it's like for a general movie-going audience, like, you know. Like a lot of like superhero films and stuff, there's not a lot of like it sort of makes sense. There's no sort of like symbolism or anything like that. It's like the story beats, you know, first, second, and third act, and the characters, like you can sort of understand the story and you can just be like, yeah, I got that, you know.
Yeah, like you don't want people to be leaving the theater confused. You know, you don't want to be films just the critics. You know, you want films that everyone can enjoy, but some people can enjoy it on like a deeper level. You know.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
And I think Jordan Peele does that so well.
Yeah, and that's the thing I sort of feel with Nolan at times, is that he sort of doesn't take into account how other people feel. Like because there are people who will sort of praise him and sort of say he's this like messiah and this amazing filmmaker, which I wouldn't know if I'd go as that far. He's a very good filmmaker, but like a modern day master, I don't know if I'd go as that far. Like, and I'm saying this as a fan, and like, he's made my favorite film, but I think that, like, again, I'm just gonna go back to it. Like Memento, it's a very, like, you see, like, you can take it as face value. Like, the way it ends, you're like, that's what the ending means, but you could take more from it if you wanted to, but you don't have to. It's sort of up to interpretation and sort of what you want to take from it.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I think Jordan Peele, I don't know if he will go to that point of Christopher Nolan where he's just making whatever he wants, because I think he is sort of, he doesn't have, I don't want to say Nolan has an ego per se, but I think
he does.
To be fair, I think at times he's not. I mean, you know, like, he recently, when Warner Brothers announced they're going to put all the films they're making over the next year or so into, like, their streaming service, he got all up in arms about that. And I don't know why, because it's kind of obvious that, like, film as a medium is sort of moving more towards that, to streaming.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I'm aware that he loves, you know, movie theaters, and I love movie theaters as well, but I'm sort of like, I would much rather see a movie in theaters because I think that's the best place to watch a film. But if it's all moving to, if a lot of it's moving to streaming, then that's fine, because that's just sort of being up in date, like, with the times,
yeah,
you know.
keeping up with the times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think he's got, like, the people who who really love him. I think they sort of feel that, like, you can't criticize him because, again, his films, like, oh, they're too smart for you. It's like, I don't really think they are. Like, I just think it's pretentious. Like, Charlie Kaufman as a filmmaker,
Yes.
he makes smart, like, he writes. He's a brilliant writer. And I liked.
Yes.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't really get I'm thinking of ending things. I need to go back and watch it again, but I don't think he's I think it's like, I didn't get this one film, but I think that's a kind of film where you kind of need to watch it again, and you need to sort of take more from it on a rewatch. And that's, I think, what Charlie Kaufman does and is so good at, is that you can watch it the first time and you can sort of get it, but if you watch it again, you get more from it, or you can gain more message, you can have a better understanding of that story. And I think with Nolan, I think most of his films, I could probably say that if I, like, most of his films I have seen, I was able to get it, I got the story, and I think Tenet is him just, like, jumping the shark and just doing too much and doing whatever he wants for the sake of it, and it resulted in a mediocre film at best.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And so Jordan Peele, we were talking about us, but I'm going on this tangent. But I just want to make this point that I'm trying to compare, in that Jordan Peele, he seems like he wouldn't, like, he got a much bigger budget for this film, and I'm sure he probably could have gotten, like, whatever budget he asked for because of that success. But he didn't. He didn't go, like, out and out crazy with this. It's a bigger film than Get Out, but it's not like a massive film. Like, there's more, like, locations and there's more characters and everything, but he doesn't just do whatever he wants. He does.
It still makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And that can happen with writers, I feel, and filmmakers, is that they make, like, this surprising hit, or this very good film, and then after that they just think they're this, like, genius, and they just make whatever they want, and it's not as good. But I would argue that this is an improvement on Get Out, because I felt like I enjoyed the story better. I felt that the characters were better. I thought the acting was better, and I just thought Get Out was not, like, I didn't think that the story that was being told in Get Out was, like, I don't want to say an original, like, it was definitely a different sort of unique way of telling that story, but it's kind of like, I've seen that in, like, I've seen better films that do that.
Yeah.
And that's just sort of what my opinion is on Us, is that it's a better film.
Yeah, definitely more evolved.
Yeah. But I will admit that Get Out is a very, like, as a film, it's very. I appreciate. I like when actors or filmmakers, writers and everything, they've done this thing for a long time, that they sort of branch off and do something else. Like, Jordan Peele, he was in comedy for a long time, and then he sort of branched off and made two very successful horror films. And I always enjoy that kind of story, and seeing this person who did this thing, who did this kind of genre once, do like a complete 180 and do this completely different genre.
Yeah.
And like, I just sort of think that this was. I feel like this is somewhat underrated. Like, I feel like a lot more people prefer Get Out as a film, and I don't really know. I don't agree with that, but I have not watched Get Out in a while, so I will have to go back and watch it again to see if my opinion changes on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that Us is definitely more evolved, more complete, like fuller, more unique, almost version of Get Out. Like, of course, the plot is different, but a lot of it has like the same themes, some of the same symbolism, even. Yeah, but both, I think, fantastic films. Us being the better.
Yeah. So I think I've said, like, basically all I want to say on this. Is there, like, anything you want, any, like, final things you wanted to say, or?
I think we've covered everything.
I'm just looking at my notes to see if there's anything else. There was, okay, I'm gonna make one final statement. It's, just, like, one final thing to say before we finish, because we've been going for over an hour now, so... thing I thought, I don't know how I feel about it. There was a bit sort of when the tethered family were like getting ready to attack like the main family, and they like lock the door or whatever, and then one of them, the tethered, gets like a key from like a spare key from under the rock, whatever. And I don't remember what the line is, but they say something about white, like, oh, of course, like, to sort of paraphrase, it's like, oh, of course, like white people would do this. Like, it's not that exact quote, but they sort of make a joke, like, oh, of course white people would do that. Like, I sort of felt that, like, well, I don't know, is that like a common thing that like just white people do, or is it like I don't know, like, was because I don't know anybody who does do that, but to be fair,
yeah,
I
think
don't.
It's more of I think it's more of an American thing.
Yeah,
I thought I got away with it. I thought it was funny.
I thought it was funny, but then I initially thought, oh, that's funny, and then I just sort of sat there thinking, like, wait a second, like, I was like, is that really like a thing that like a lot of white people do? Like, again,
yeah,
I was just sort of like, yeah, but that's just like the final note that I've made. So what would you give Us? Like, what rating would you give it?
I think there were some minor like dialogue and humor issues, but on a whole, I think it was a fantastic movie, and I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
A 9. I think when I first, I was initially gonna go with a 9 out of 10 when I thought, like when I was watching this, I was like, oh, this is so good, and then I just sort of felt that like something like the comedy didn't work. I thought some of the, like, I thought the twist was like fine, like it wasn't like anything amazing, and I just sort of felt that it was, I don't know, some of it just like didn't work for me. So I gave it an 8 out of 10 for Us. So that is the end of our discussion on Us. Thank you for listening to this. Yeah, I think we're done. Do you have any final things you'd like to say at all, Kitty?
No, thanks for having me back.
Yeah,
It's
it's
been
all
a
good.
pleasure.
Yeah, I hope to have you back in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So yeah, thanks for listening. Uh, Go back and listen to any old episodes I've done if this is not the first episode, and I hope to see you all next week. Bye.